All right. Good morning, everyone. It's good to have you here. This is the first of three sessions on causal pathways evaluation that we going to do specifically for the Asia Pacific audience. So usually, I think just like last year, we did something like this for the US and the European continent, and the time-wise, it's killing the both of us. So we intentionally do this for our colleges in the Asia Pacific. So welcome everyone. Let me go through this. So for where's wait, hold on. This one. All right. For today, we're going to focus on the essential groundwork for the journeys that we are starting to begin with through the Causal Pathways Initiative. This initiative exists to initially to make visible what often feels like a black box in the philanthropy work and system change work. This initiative intends to help us to collectively see how the systems are or are not changing. We are here part of the international learning community, evaluators, strategists, funders, and even change makers who are all currently grappling with one core challenge is that how do we understand what's actually contributing to change in complex and dynamic systems? This module that we built over the year is all about building shared understanding of what causal pathways are, why they matter, and what it takes to be truly ready to explore them. In many ways, today is our collective pause before the deep dive. It's where we begin to challenge assumptions, surface myths, and think more critically about how change really unfolds, not just in theory, but also in practice. What we're going to explore together today is we will set the stage for the rigor and values. We'll unpack it in module 2, which should be next week. And then the design and implementation strategies that we're going to put into motion in module 3 should be in the next 2 weeks. So let's begin by grounding ourselves in both the mindset and the muscle. We'll need to make the most of these strategic approaches. Now we have two trainers today. The first one is I will introduce Jeff. Please open your mic, Jeff, and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jeff. I'm a Indian. I live in New Zealand, and I love evaluation and design. I also love hunting and poetry and all sorts of other things. And that photo is a little bit old. It's not what I look like, but it is what I'm like. I like doing stuff that's exciting and different, difficult and different. So that's me. You'll get to know me over the next 3 sessions.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. My name is Yulianto Dewata. I'm from Indonesia. I've been an evaluation practitioner for the past 20 years. Unlike Jeff, this is my current picture. My dark side is listening to heavy metal music, as you can see on my t-shirt. So it's good to facilitate the discussion today. All right, Carolina will pull up the poll that I'm hoping that you guys can enter in your responses. But basically, the poll is that to get the most of a causal pathways at force require that everyone involved has some understanding of the approach in order to get the most from the process as possible. And we would like to understand your role because causal pathways isn't just an evaluation approach, it's a powerful strategy tool, and we have seen it work effectively as an ongoing evaluative tools in adaptive system-focused change strategies. We've seen it work well with active participation by people in the system, even children involved in the part of the system change work. Okay, let me put this out. Okay, it would be great also to see your level of experience with causal pathways evaluations, and you should not be worried because the causal pathways is a journey that many for us are just the beginning. I know from my own journey in the past couple of years that it requires giving up some of my assumption about how evaluation tell causal stories, about whether our traditional approaches that capture strategies, outcome, and description context truly making sense of causality amidst complexity. Aha. So, mostly we coming from the non-profit organization type, for profit 14%, and others. I'm interested to see what others are. Primary role, we have, half of us are the evaluators, and then program office or manager, philanthropic from non-profit program staff. Okay. Aha. It's good, Jeff, that we have the right audience. That I think the majority of the participants here are meeting the new to the causal pathway evaluations, and about a quarter of them have learned some about causal pathways evaluation, but haven't conducted one. All right, awesome. Because this. So we get into the agenda. Okay. This is the agenda for today. Today's session for the next 2 hours. We're going to discuss about how to build a shared understanding of causal pathways evaluation, getting it more ready, both individually and for organizational to do this work well. This means as well that we're going to surface some of the reasons that has yet felt accessible or actionable probably in your experience, and to identify what it takes to help others move from curiosity to confidence. We need to inform you that this is a living training. We're going to continually learning and improving it, and we would like to have your feedback by the end of the session for next session improvement. And then we're going through the presentations. There will be a reserved time for question and answer at the end of the session. But you are welcome to drop your questions, comments in the chat as we go, or keeping it up and do the open mic for the question and answer session. So we're quite flexible on this. If we cannot get to everything or to respond to all of your questions, we'll try to follow up afterwards. Lastly, all materials will be shared after the session, including the recording. So depends on you. No need to capture every detail as you see on the slides. You can stay focused on the conversations, and let's have a nice discussion. Before I hand it over to Jeff, I would like to let you know that on the slide here, we tend to use these terms interchangeably: strategy, initiative, project, program, intervention. So let's not be confused that we all can safe to assume that we're talking about evaluation related to whatever focus you will have, your program, your portfolio, strategy, or initiative intervention of a project. So we're going to be flexible on this. All right, so I hand it over. Jeff, your turn. I will move the slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Yulianto, and hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, just go to that next slide. Thanks, Yulianto. So you guys are wondering, what is this causal pathway things? Why do we do it? What's different about causal pathways? So to get started, let's compare causal pathways to what we call the normal evaluation, which we're calling descriptive. And here's the typical evaluation. The question you're asking is, what changes are happening? And you use a theory of change. You say, these guys, we funded them, and they said, if we do this and this and this, then that will happen. If we do these programs on literacy, then people are going to do such and such. And the evaluator, maybe me, I'm an evaluator, we get to measure how many people, what activities did they do. We look at the activities, and we look at the progress. We look at the quality. How well do they do it? What happened? Are the people reading? And we make we do consider the context. A decent evaluation should anyway. What was it about? What was the context like for reading? Were books available? What was the socioeconomic conditions? Various assumptions. But roughly, the logic is if we say they did these interventions pretty well, and a whole lot of people are reading, A causes B, and it worked. And we say, congratulations, carry on, keep going. Causal path, that's obviously a stereotype, but that roughly is the normal evaluation logic. Causal pathways, we're asking a different question. We're not asking what changed. We're asking how and why did things change? And we don't really base the whole thing on a theory of change. We're expecting that the intervention changed and evolved. Maybe it was too complex even to have a decent theory of change. And we're trying to use the word black box that Yulianto used already. We're trying to get into the black box and say, what's going on inside that box there? How do things work in there? And so, yes, we do look at what the intervention did and how well they did it. We do look at outcomes, what happened, but also not just did the stuff they expect to happen, but also what else happened. And I'm going to give you an example of this in the case study that's coming up. Context and assumptions, which are a much bigger deal in causal pathway stuff, because we think every human being in every situation is nested in a context, and things only happen relative to the context. And the pathway is linking, this is the outcome, this is what happened. And then we're trying to make more nuanced links between interventions and contextual factors and possibly other mechanisms, and how does the whole thing weave into change? And that kind of evidence, not the theory of change, that's the evidence that lets us understand what's going on. If you click on the next slide. So what we're talking here, Yulianto, next slide, yeah, and click again. It's a much bigger fish trout. It's a much bigger, slipperier fish, a causal pathways evaluation, but hell, it's worth it. It's pretty satisfying to catch a fish like that, but it is quite slippery. Next slide. So we had a metaphor of a mirror versus an X-ray, but this is from my brother-in-law, who's an Antarctic scientist and studies icebergs and climate change and stuff. So here's in 2 dimensions, icebergs floating in a bay in Greenland. And yes, he does this. He studies how big they are, how many they are, how fast they're moving out down the bay, what other directions are they moving in, what changes in their size, and all the stuff that the stuff scientists do. And that's very good and very important. But that's only telling us about it's telling us what's happening. It's not telling us, if you click again, Yulianto, it's not going down and saying what my brother-in-law also does is dives under the water, and he looks at the interface between the ice and the water and looks at the crystalline structure. How fast is it melting? What's the salinity there? He gets into the water. What are the currents? Why are things pushing around? So you've got this evaluation in 2 dimensions like this, and you've got one going down like that, and they work well together. And that's a really big take home. It's not causal pathways or other stuff. It's causal pathways and other stuff. And so he can give a much better description of how and why those icebergs are moving around the way they are. And hopefully with our evaluations, we're able to give a much better idea of how and why prisoners go back to prison. The example I'm just about to give you. That's my visual metaphor for causal pathways. And we'll give you a case study here. Next slide, Yulianto. Okay, so this is an organization called the Pathway Trust in New Zealand. All the photos, by the way, are AI generated from the internet. I couldn't take photos. You'll see why I couldn't take real photos in this. It's a prison rehabilitation program in New Zealand. Yeah, thank you. And click again. And it's a unique adventure. These are for serious prisoners. It's a high security prison. People with 10 and 15-year sentences they've killed people, they've raped people. The intervention is unique and in a unique context. Hold that in mind. For historical reasons, 4 small houses have been built inside the prison. You're still inside the wire. And there's a complex selection process for who gets selected for this, but for each house, 4 people. So 16 prisoners get selected to live in a house in a, inverted commas, semi-normalized kind of life with social interaction. That's how I got involved. I'd go in once a week and write poetry with these guys. They play music. They've got a pool table. They live in their houses. They have a budget. They buy their own food. They get taken once a week with with bracelets and an armed security guard to go and do their own shopping. They do their own cooking, and it doesn't change their sentence. Their sentence is just as long as it was. But when they do get let out on parole or for real, they don't just get let out into the community. There's a halfway house run by the Pathway Trust where a whole lot of other guys like that live, and a social worker gives them support and driving licenses and setting up a bank account and applying for jobs and getting CVs and just living. And even after that, after some years when they rehabilitate and they're working in jobs, someone is contacting them for the rest of their life, has a relationship with them. So it's quite high support, but it costs $200,000 a year to keep a prisoner inside, and it costs a whole lot less to do this. So if you can have fewer prisoners, even just economically, it's a good idea. Next slide. This is a, so what we're comparing is that kind of image of prison. This is AI generated, or the next one, please. Versus, consider being like this. And this is AI generated. Uncle Google gave me a lovely green picture outside. Actually, it's a prison yard. But inside the houses, it's roughly like this. 4 guys living together, cooking. And you can see why this is a different way to be in prison. Next slide. Okay, so what's the theory of change of this thing? This thing had no theory of change. A Christian guy just said, it's got to be good just to be decently human to the least of my brothers. And so he just went in there and he found there's these 4 buildings there and said, why not do this? And maybe in the back of his mind, he had an idea, activities, responsibility, and social interaction made prisoners better adapted to life outside. That may be an implicit theory of change in there. It was never stated. He just did a suck it and see. He just followed his nose, which actually in complexity, as you guys will know, is actually a pretty good way to deal with complexity. You just follow your nose and respond to what's happening around you. The program's had multiple evaluations by the guy who's the top criminologist in New Zealand. And he does pretty much what the iceberg evaluation. He looks at them, he describes the pathway activities, what the prisoners have done, how many prisoners have been in it, what happens in the rehabilitation phase, and he measures recidivism rate, reoffending rates, which are the best by a mile in New Zealand or Australasia. And he's done many of these evaluations. Every few years he does one. And his conclusion, his recommendation, much more nicely stated, is basically, you're doing a great job, carry on, you're doing a great job. Fantastic. By the way, the little excerpts there are real excerpts from the evaluation we did. Next slide. Because I was writing poetry with the prisoners, the Pathway Trust said to me, would you like to do and they found out I was an evaluator, would you do an evaluation with us? Yeah, I'd love to. So we did a participatory outcome harvest, which is one of in the suite, we'll introduce them, in the suite of evaluation methodologies that can give you causal pathway results. It's one of them. Pathway Trust gave me a TOR, as everyone does, and it's got evaluation questions in it. And I said, nah, no evaluation questions. I'm not doing that. Give me a TR with no evaluation questions. And they did. And we went and we did with a group of prisoners and a group of warders together. Think what a big step that was. They defined the evaluation questions. They drew murals and told stories and cut up magazines and stuck them on. And we played around for 2 days and they said what the evaluation questions are. And then the prisoners went out and they did the interviews. They got the qualitative data, which was great because they're much better at talking to another prisoner than I am. I did the quantitative stuff and the recidivism rates and how much things had cost and how many activities. I did that bit of it. And then the prisoners, and we've got the picture of it here. One of these got, no, just go back, Julianto. You've got a picture of one of these is a prisoner and they're on a computer. It was a big deal to get them allowed to do that. They're using qualitative research software to analyze their other prisoners' stories. Fantastic. And they did the coding. I did the analysis on that and played around with the little buttons. And then we did a scene. Then I presented it back to prisoners' anchorage and stuff. Said, this is what I think we found. So that was the process. That was the method. And it was fantastic fun. And we'll get on. Yeah, give us the next slide, Julianto. And so this is the pathway we found. Firstly, here's the normal thing that's happening with prisoners because of a socioeconomic situation, which works really well for me, but not for a whole lot of other New Zealanders. And it may be colonialism. It's mostly Indigenous people in prison. And they've got strong messages there outside. Next click. And there's a driver to this, and click again. They feel like us outsiders, and just keep clicking up for a little bit. They don't feel included. And stop there. They commit crimes. They're punished. They get grabbed by the indigenous people. They get into a Western justice system. They get essentially punished with sentences and confinement and little cells, etc. And they get let out again. And they're even more alienated, and they're even less adapted to the world in which they live. And they commit crimes. And next click. And you can see there's just a cycle going like this and this. That's what's happening. They're going through the cycle, and that's what recidivism is. So that's the background. Click again, Yulianto. So here's the causal pathway we found. And just go slowly, click by click. Next one. If they experience acceptance, humanity, and inclusion in prison, this is actually what our evaluation told us. And I've put these logical, because to tell you it's a causal pathway. One thing leads to another. Then they click, Yulianto. They grow a sense of inclusion. And mana is a New Zealand Indigenous Māori word. It means I'm worth something. Look at me, here I am. It means self-worth. It means self-respect. And if they've got mana, therefore, and so, click again, they suddenly find they want to contribute. We found this in the evaluation. We found the guys who'd been through the program. I want to be part of this thing. They want to conform. They feel part of society. And click again. If they also have intensive community rehabilitation with humanity and skill building and support, and you see the logical connections, then and if they also, click again, they can live in community. And we found there's guys like this working in jobs in hardware and on the roads, etc. in the community. They can establish a relationship with the normal world. And there's the causal pathway in front of you. That's how recidivism is being reduced massively, better than anywhere in New Zealand or Australia. And this evaluation found every single step in that was there, emerged in our evaluation. And if you click again, here's a magical thing that happened as well. We kind of predicted the stuff with the prisoners. No one predicted this with the wardens. This emerged in the evaluation. There's this parallel process going on with the wardens. As they become more humane and they have resources to treat prisoners nicely, the wardens are softening up and changing who they are. And obviously those two things build on each other. More humane wardens means better rehabilitation, which means wardens feel blah, blah, blah. And those two are real quotes from the evaluation. A guy who was not involved in the program, he said, we're all here from the fight, just we've got the uniforms and batons and they don't. That kind of hard approach of a prison warder. To a warden, he told me, that I took that interview, I come to work thinking of how I can express love for the men under my care. Transformation. And that no one had ever predicted that that in the program. This just emerged. Yep, next click. There's a picture of mana. This is from the New Zealand rugby team, but it's an illustration of what mana means. So from learning to action, what the causal pathway did, this program can't be replicated because it's historical, quirky reasons that there's 4 houses inside a prison in New Zealand. You can't do that in other high security prisons. Even if you tried replicating the activities, that wouldn't work unless you knew why you were replicating it, what you're trying to do with those activities. What you have to do is replicate that causal pathway that I showed you. And I'm in conversation now with the New Zealand justice system, and the nub of the conversation is what we need to do is mana enhancing programs in prison, which came straight out of the causal pathways evaluation. It's an evidence-based, this is what you need to do. So that's what learning to action. The evaluation tells us what we need to do. Next slide. Cool. So I hope that's quite convincing about why you might want to do a causal pathway evaluation. Let's flick to the other side. Why would you not want to do it? What's holding us back from doing this? And there's 4 groups of we call them myths, but 4 reasons why people, and there they are there, 4 general reasons about why people might want to do causal pathway evaluations. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Because there's things holding us back, particularly in philanthropic organizations and funders. And then you guys who have the money, you're the guys who enable us as evaluators to do what we do. So if there's a change of thinking about why you'd want to do it, then guys in funding organizations, you've got a lot of power in your hand to be able to drive a change. And if you're interested in digging into this topic, there's a great article called The Lost Causal, and it's available, we'll give it the link to you on the Causal Pathways resource page, and it was published in the Foundation Review. It's written by our colleagues, Julia, who's actually the founder and the pulsing heartbeat of the whole Causal Pathways program, Sarah Stachariak and Julia Kaufman. So if you want to go into it, and we really recommend that, it's a really great article. Okay, next slide. Okay, the first one is that causal designs aren't accessible. That the designs that and there's four kind of subcategories under this. One is it's too much burden on participants, and yes, they always will be participatory, or nearly always. Secondly, that they can't be implemented in ways that are appropriate for working with communities. And then the third and fourth one, they're kind of a bit more philosophical, that they're rooted in white supremacy. You know, these big foundations and us with our privilege and power, we start, but people on the ground aren't really thinking causally. We're going to debunk these myths. And the final one is that it's run by the philanthropy, it's run by the funders, it's our baby, it's not theirs. And we're going to challenge all of those myths. Where should we start? Okay, I want you to see the designs, instead of being burdensome for participants. Actually, we'll go to the next slide here, Yulianto. And there's what we're thinking now. I want you to focus on the second box, the one out of the left. The burden. Don't just think about the burden, how much time you're asking communities to put into this. Although even that's, it's not for them. And I've done many of causal participatory evaluations. Communities always feel so honored that my voice is part of it, and I'm able to get my voice out there. So it's seen more as an opportunity than a burden. But even if it's time, even still, don't just look at it in terms of that cost. Say, what is the benefit? Think what the difference is between in that prison evaluation of saying, this is what we need to do. We need to do mana enhancing programs, versus the top criminologist in New Zealand saying, good work, carry on, without any idea of why or what's going on. And in that sense, you might say that actually the non-causal evaluation, where you use up a little bit of people's time and a significant amount of their money, that's the one that's too burdensome, because you're getting very little return for that. Whereas these ones, you get a much bigger bang for your buck. That's next slide, Yulianto. I hope you guys are flicking in your your questions. It should be stimulating ideas, and no, but if what, I don't agree with that. This guy's talking a load of nonsense. I hope some of you are thinking like that. Okay, causal designs focus on the past and do not help with future decision making. I think I just showed you in the pathway example that the idea, you can't change what you don't. Well, you can change it, but you're much better at changing what you do understand rather than what you don't. And when you suddenly have this word, let's do a mana enhancing program, it suddenly tells us, we're talking about, I hope this happens. There's lots of barriers, of course, but imagine a group of consultant prisoners from the place I did it, me taking them to somewhere else to give advice in another program about what could be mana enhancing in that context. Wow, wouldn't that be cool? And that's the future decision making. And then again, the idea that, okay, even if you're talking about the future, what about right now? I've just been asked, I just came off half an hour before this started, a call with an Australian organisation who wants me to do some help with their monitoring system, and they want the causal links in their theory of change to be displayed in their monitoring for real-time action. And yeah, take causal as a way of thinking rather than, we are going to show you some tools, but as a way of thinking. How do you think about this? Should I think about causality? And for the prison program, I just told you, the guys in the organization who run the pathway organization totally loved it. And now they standardly just say, whenever they're thinking of, should we do this tomorrow? They say, yeah, where's the mana in that? They say, yeah, we're going to do some food for the prisoners, but let's also play some Māori music and the kind of the traditional songs, and that's where the mana's going to come from. And that's, it's real time. It's actually saying what's the nub of the causal chain, and then make sure it's there the whole time, stimulating their program to keep going. Next slide. I have speaker notes. I've gone off track now, but hopefully this is making sense. This one's a little bit tricky. The idea that, actually, why do we need to add this causal pathway stuff? All evaluations are actually talking about causality and what causes what. That's what evaluation is. And yes, that is what it is. And definitely, we do not want to say, don't do standard evaluations. We love standard evaluations. I've done lots of them in my life. What the nub of this whole thing is, say, do that beautiful standard evaluation and dig down. Add this other dimension to what you're already doing. And that's, so we're saying what we do need to know what's happening, but also say in this situation, may it be useful to also know why and how that happens. So yeah, that's, and the descriptive evaluation, it's not worth nothing. It is worth something, but I think there's much better value in terms of how much people commit to evaluation to actually do this. High quality causal analysis triangulates data about specific relations and says, how does the context work and what are the pathways of change, and interprets evidence with group sense-making efforts by experts by experience, which in my prison evaluation would be prisoners and warders. And it's not just saying what changed, but it's what made that change possible. Which of our strategies actually added to that? And they'll tell you, they tell you, they know. They're just waiting for us to ask them to come in there with that mindset. So the call to action here isn't to abandon current evaluation practice, deepen it, and move from descriptive storytelling to robust, inclusive learning and how change really happens kind of evaluations. Next slide, please. Just go back one. Yeah, this is really important, particularly if you guys are from philanthropic organizations. You want rigor in your evaluations, and that's really important. But we'd like to challenge in these 3 sessions. It's not going to happen just in, today. What is what actually constitutes rigor? And we've all been brought up with the Western, Greek kind of philosophical idea that the hypothetico-deductive, if this, then that, and the way to do it is by randomized double-blind controlled trials or counterfactuals. If this happened, that happens. If this didn't happen, that happens. Therefore, A equals B. With causal pathways, well, we'll get onto what generative means, but it's that logical kind of idea. And then the randomized controlled trials and quasi-experimental methods in the counterfactual family, the causal relationship is A equals B. And in order to really do that, it's kind of, you want to take your social situation into a laboratory. And if you're saying the counterfactual, you say, who did it work for and who didn't it work for? It's got to have been implemented in exactly the same way in the two, otherwise it's not a valid experiment. And the other, so it's got to be complete fidelity. You're doing it the same in the 2 places, and you say this works here and not there because it works for these people and not those people. And also it's got to have this this counterfactual, a place where it doesn't happen, or an alternative version of the program, or no program at all. And you randomly assign participants to the, and if they're double blind, they don't even know which group they're in, but either in the control group or the counterfactual. And it leads lots of cases, but also irritatingly, it's impossible. As you all know, in the real world, you can't do something exactly the same every time. There's going to be some quirky difference. It's maybe possible in a laboratory, but that laboratory thinking isn't valid out here. So causal pathways and the generative family, which assumes that there are many different factors and may A causes B, but only if C and D are also present, and if G happened to have happened beforehand, and there are cause and effect. It doesn't say there's not cause and effect, but we can't control all the things and isolate one instance and do a scientific study on it. So you've got to find it out by other ways. And the generative approaches really recognize complexity, which is that sometimes you can't predict what's going to happen. No one predicted that prison staff are going to talk about loving the prisoners under their care who might have raped or killed people. No one predicted that, but it happened. Hell. So to uncover the causal relations, the generative approaches seek various explanations and rivals, and how do you test them? This, we'll show you some of the methods that do that. But it's triangulating data from multiple sources, get experts by experience, examine specific links, interpret evidence, collaboratively with people who know what's going on. And even if you're not an evaluator, I hope that the generative approaches you can see that that's a different way of knowing about the world. It's a different philosophy. And I keep on saying, think about causal pathways as a philosophical shift first, and then it's a methodological shift. Next slide, Yulianto. So there's an idea that there's no rigorous experimental designs. We say there are, and they're in three various groups. There's theory-based ones, which are a way of thinking, a way of approaching. There's participatory ones. I just showed you the outcome harvesting, which is actually just get people who really understand the situation to tell you what's going on in the data. And then there's system-based ones, which are kind of a little bit theoretical, but stand back and you say, if you look systemically, can we see what's driving the system? I'm not, and I doubt anyone in the world is an expert in all of these methods. But I have expertise with some of them, and Yulianto has expertise with others. And you have a variety of methods, and you've got to find the best fit. And as you might bricolage some together and say, I do some outcome harvesting and some realist evaluation with a little bit of causal mapping, and we'll combine them. And so, and if that's making you feel a little bit queasy about, but what about the rigor? Is this really sticking to the right methodology? I want to challenge that a little bit, and we're gonna come up with the next slide. The bottom line, I'll go through the three key takeaways, but the bottom line there, which I added, then I played guitar in the whare. Whare is a Māori word which means the house, and that's from the prison evaluation. And I didn't have a clue what that meant with all my experimental methods and my stats and all that kind of stuff. And the prisoners say, fuck, man, he's telling you that he felt pretty good about himself. He felt mana because he could go and pick up the guitar and, do a bit of this. And it was totally obvious for them that that prisoner was talking about the key causal component of the whole program. And I couldn't see it with all my scientific rigor. So let's challenge the idea of what rigor really is. And I think we've got a bit more about it in the second of these two. But here are the three big takeaways. I like things that go down to small, only a few lessons. So every program thinks when it starts the program, if we do this, then that might happen. So we've got causality and there'll be a because. We think this causes that. We're good at thinking that when we design things. We're not so good at when we evaluate them. We go for high quality correlation rather than causation. So what the clarion call of this whole thing is, let's get better at asking the question as well as designing around causality. The second one is that there are methods that work. There isn't a lack of rigor. There's a different kind of rigor, but there are methods which have been used and tested and field tested a lot. There's people out there who have expertise in them. We don't have to say, oh, how do we do a quasi-experimental design here? We might do that in some cases, but you can find people who can do other things. and there's ways of finding out about causality. So there is the capacity to understand how causality works out there among evaluators. And the third one, rigor and participation are entangled, and that's what the guitar and the whare means. That is what rigor is. It's understanding, having the right ways to understand complexity, and to leave behind the idea that rigor is only that statistical thing of, statistical and logical thing. Rigor, think of rigor as a process thing. Was my process rigor enough to capture what we need to? Okay, that's, yeah, next slide, Yulianto. That's me doing my spiel. There's not too many of you here, so I think Carolina is going to put you into, or give you the opportunity to go into a group and talk about those questions. What is big for you in terms of that group of myths? And there's the questions, you have them with you. These don't work for everyone, these breakout groups. They work really well for me. You don't have to go into your room. There'll be a room in the middle where you can just stay and talk to each other. You can go and get yourself a cup of coffee, or if it's Yulianto, he'll be turning on some rock music and banging his head against something just to wake himself up. But just try to do whatever works for you best in terms of just consolidating the concepts we've been talking about. So invite you to go to the rooms if you'd like to. We'll pull you out in 5 minutes. Let's just do it now. I see we haven't got all our participants back yet, but I'll invite them. Just from anyone who is present here now, are there any comments, questions, ideas that you'd like to bring up?
I think the participants can just open their microphone, yeah. See.
We do have one question in the chat to kick things off, and then definitely invite anyone else who has questions to open their mic, like Yulianto said. But one of the questions we have from Laura is, were you able to tie recidivism rates of those particular individuals to a counterfactual, or is that not realistic?
What a great question, Laura. So when my initial answer to that is no, of course not. But actually, it's more nuanced. Let's say yes. The counterfactual is every other prison in New Zealand and Australia where they don't do this. We've got counterfactuals built for us already. And you say the recidivism, it's not for any specific prisoner, but overall statistically, recidivism rates are much lower amongst this group who does this pathway thing than anyone else doing anything else in New Zealand or Australasia, which somehow among all those people, there must be a relatively similar population. Mostly, particularly if you just compare to New Zealand, similar laws, similar prison connection, none of them the same, but similar ethnicities in prison, and nothing with the same recidivism rates, which seems a pretty good tick from that kind of counterfactual thinking. If there's one program that does this and no other program, and has amazing recidivism rates and no other program. On the other hand, could you do a counterfactual but all those prisons are different. Could you do a counterfactual in Christchurch prison? Only 16, and the answer is a kind of qualified yes as well. Only 16 prisoners out of, I think they've got about 320 prisoners of the high security, long-term prisoners there. 16 get chosen at one time, and they're slowly cycling through. I think there's been 46 people through this program. So you can look at the recidivism rates of those 46 compared to all the other people who've been in Christchurch prison and released but haven't been part of the pathway. So there again is a naturally built counterfactual. But for each one of those individual guys, you cannot build a counterfactual and what would have happened if he wasn't involved in the pathway program. There's no way of knowing, except there is. You go and talk to the dude and say, mate, what is important about it looks like you've done okay. What's important? And you get these guys with tattoos all over them and only a few teeth left. And you say, fuck, man, I found love in there. And you think, he's telling me that what the difference was. And people say, I think I had a quote up there. If it wasn't for this, I'd be lost. They're telling you this is my counterfactual. I know what would have happened if I wasn't there. So that whole idea of doing it via stories rather than via stats, there are other ways to do counterfactuals. But great question, Laura. Thank you. If there are no other questions, any reflections? Someone's got a hand. Jerian, go for it. Unmute your mic and tell us.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Gerianne. By the way, very similar story. It's from my husband's uncle. My husband's Kiwi, and there is a very similar program up in Northland where I lived with my family-in-law, and he was involved with a program very similar with young Maori youth, but before they got into the whole crime scene. Unfortunately, that program got cut by the current government, but this is sort of similar case study, I think. My question really comes from, I really work for a networking organization, really working with local grassroots, and the whole idea is to work at that food systems level. Evaluation is still very new for this organization. They haven't really done any monitoring and evaluations, and they don't have big institutional donors breathing in their neck with traditional log frames and indicators. And it's fantastic because I get a brand new playing field basically as the first meal lead. So I was just wondering if this type of approach, when you don't have to necessarily do the rigorous data collection because you don't have those donors requiring it, is also very suitable if you are like 1, 2, 3 steps removed from direct impact in the community, right? We really work at the network level, at the systems level, and how would this sort of causal pathway approach and thinking apply? Because what I hear a lot from our team is that people tend to say what we do, what we train on, how we serve the network, how we build their technical capacity, it works, but they can't put a finger on why it works or how it works. But it's just based on years and years and years of experience.
Again, fantastic question, Jerry, and so much in that. Firstly, thank you for knowing what New Zealand's about and talking about Māori people. It warms my heart when people know about my country. How do you do causal? One of the things about having evaluated philanthropic organisations breathing down your neck is that sometimes they also breathe down your neck with a few dollar signs, so you have a few more resources to do stuff. So your question is, how do we do causal analysis or find out the why and how without a whole lot of resources? And are you coming to that? I hope you're coming to the second and third ones, because that's kind of unpacking a little bit more. Today's more an overview and introduction, but I think the answer to it is to say, let the experts by experience tell you, which is the people in the situation, and what is, and redefine this idea of rigor. We don't have resources to get rigorous data, which generally to most of us means collect lots of data. Let's redefine that to saying rigorous means get deep data. And if you've got, I don't know if you've got any experience with realist evaluation. I'm not an expert on all the methods we showed you. I'm pretty decent on realist evaluation, but that's a way that really does that. It says you don't need a mass of data, but you need really, really well designed interviews for a small amount of data. And it's really, really great for asking the how and why and for whom kind of questions. At a more general level, and I think we say today, but it might be in one of the other sessions, find an evaluator, because these are quite complex things to do, but if you can find an evaluator and then design, I've just been doing that just now with the monitoring system I mentioned, say this is what we need, and get someone with a variety of skills who can co-design with you. This is what you need, this is what we propose, and you iterate a little bit and then figure out a way to do it. This is our resource. The people I just talked to have very little resources, but we figured out a way to make it work. And you're welcome to contact Causal Pathways team or any one of us to further that. Thanks for the question, mate.
I think in my
No, thank you. And I think, to be honest, I think the resources isn't necessarily the biggest problem. No, we don't. We're a small organization. But there's definitely the mindset to want to do evaluation. But I think therefore also the value is in making sure that the the network organizations are part of the process. I think that's also where the value is. And rather than just externally collecting a lot of data and yeah, I see the limitations of that as well, having done plenty of those in the past. Yeah.
Okay, I think if there is still time, I may add something, Jeff and Carolina. I think it's also important to understand the pathways to change that the program teams agrees on what or why changes happen. I think Jeff in the earlier slide put a very good slide about about the condition that needs to happen to be able to see something has changed. And Jeff already put an example like if something happened, then something happened. And then I think will help the program team to understand the pathways to change and how they contribute to those changes. It takes some kind of buy-in from the program team, and it's something that we will discuss after this session. Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, Yolanda, I think the summary of that is take causal pathways for all of you guys as a way of thinking. Yes, it's going to be some methods as well, but the key thing is the thinking. Do we want to know these questions? And then figure out how you'll get those answers. I think Carolina or Yulianto, if you click the next slide, I think it's that wonderful time in the highlight of every presentation. Click the next slide. Yes, there it is. You can all go and get your coffees and stick your feet up and walk around and pat your dog or whatever you do. And we'll start in 5 minutes with Yulianto.
Hope everyone is back with their coffee and tea. So let's tea. Okay, the next one is building the buy-in. Okay, tapping into existing curiosity about change processes. In this process, convincing the program teams of the value to explore causal pathways often starts with try something bigger. It's like helping them to see the value of the learning itself and how evaluation can support that learning in a meaningful, not burdensome way, like the myth that we learned earlier. Now, that's a broader challenge in this kind of field that, in my experience, teams need also to work in a complex system that are already asking deep questions about how change actually happens. And there's usually a natural curiosity what we can tap into. From the start, most teams are making like a hypothesis, whether it's explicitly or not explicitly about how change will unfold. And once implementation is underway, they start to see what's working, what's not working, and they have some kind of an evolving assumptions and observation that deserves more attention in some places. Instead of starting with evaluation methods or jargon, we often begin with a simple invitation to the team, like, when it comes to the changes you're trying to create, what are you most curious about? That kind of question shifts the energy and it opens the door for conversation and often leads to naturally exploring the causal pathways together between the evaluation team and the program team. But we need to get their trust to be able to build that kind of communication relationship. And trust builds when we, as the evaluators, understand the context, honor the work, and show up not just a technical expert, but also as a learning partners. In some cases, in my project, we call it like a critical friends. That's the role that we get to play, not to judge, but to walk alongside the teams to figure out what's really driving the change. In the context of program implementations, we sometimes not need to initiate a new kind of meeting, a new type of workshops. but can um, we can approach the team to learn about past evaluation of learning processes that we look into what they are already doing and we tap into their activities. For example, rather than trying to introduce something new type of workshop, new types of methods of communication to discuss, we can look into the moment of the program implementation, like when they do the strategy meetings, during the granted check-ins, or during the monitoring activities. So this is that the M&E team joining their activities to be able to reflect and asking questions, whether it's a formally or informally context. Strategy meetings, usually the time when the teams are revisiting the approach, discussing their approach, reflection. So it's a good time where evaluators come into these meetings and have a discussion with the team. Grantee checks-ins, in my experience, I don't usually set up a specific grantee check-in time, but I usually tag along with the grant teams, the programmatic team during grantee reporting check-ins that I can join the discussion, see, checking what kind of changes that they have, what kind of a challenge that they have at the time. We can also do the routine monitoring activities where the data might spark curiosities and raise new questions about some findings, some stories that the grant is telling us during our field trip. We can do some kind of an opening questions, opening communications with the team, with the grantees, something like, what are you noticing? What are you wondering about? What might be contributing to the change that you are doing right now, or probably the lack of it? That kind of curiosity is usually open the door for exploring the causal pathways and engaging in more communications with the team. Now, once we found this natural opening, like strategy meetings, grantee check-ins, monitoring activities, we can then start to listen for the kind of questions people are already asking. Like, what would it take to make progress toward a desired outcome? How will we know if that's working? Like the previous question from one of our participants, how do we know if that's working? How has this change come about? What or who contributed to it? And how do we know what kind of information, what kind of data that we can use, that we have to be able to comfortable saying that something has changed? These are all the questions that open the door to exploring causal pathways, and they can become a powerful entry points for a deeper learning conversation with the program team. The key is we don't have to lead with evaluation frameworks, with evaluation questions, or start with the technical methods, specific approaches, specific methodology, but we can start with a simple question that really matters to them, and we can build from there. We need probably to offer some kind of a lighter touch to begin to answer the causal questions. Like, it's kind of a way to maximizing the quality and rigor within the real world time and resource constraint, and it also minimizing the demand on the initiative staff and other partners as well. We can also acknowledging the limitation that they have, probably the bias or gaps in quantity and quality of data and the kind of information they have, and it's okay for them to understand this kind of limitation. Two approaches that usually we can do that might be suitable to begin the journey of conversation about exploring the causal pathways with the program team. The first one is after action reviews. So this is something that I think most of the program are doing when they complete one activity, one big training, or one set of project intervention, the after action reviews. This is a familiar terms to the development program. So in this opportunity, we can explore and reflect on particular action, particular research, and even we can tweak the process of discussion to include some causal questions. We should not only asking what happened, but also tweak the question to check how a change did happen or how a change that we expect did not happen, and for whom those changes with benefit and under what conditions, and what kind of difference had it made to the beneficiaries or our partners. I think it would be ideal as well to invite a critical friend or a colleague to these after action reviews, so they can be helpful as a way to triangulate the data from the staff or partners and increase in credibility of the funding. So it's not just based on the finding of the program team, but there is an independent critical friend, critical partner who would also support or asking about the process, how one change happened. The other approach is storytelling. Storytelling approach offers another good starting point for causal pathways exploration. It's something that most people do naturally, making it probably less burdensome for the project team rather than doing other heavy data collection approaches or data collection process. Drawing out a story from a storyteller can be structured to ask about changes, how they did or did not come, and for whom and under what condition those changes happen, and what differences that it made. So it's not just telling any story, but have a specific questions they can use to build the story. So with the stories, we can also begin to understand some causal pathways. Eliciting stories about the same change from different people can also help triangulate and increase credibility of the change based on what the story told during the discussion. So triangulation is still important during storytelling, that if more than one person, one group telling same or similar story, that's something really happened. The other ways to encourage the team to explore the causal pathways is, instead of only engaging those in the program team with decision-making authority, we can also engage those closest to the work. It's either the program implementer, the beneficiaries, the grantees that can will be part of the discussion to explore the causal pathways. Those closest to the work of the changing systems might be have the best or more appropriate sufficient information about how something has changed and how it come about and what benefit for them. The other approach is we can try to let go of this heavy wording, causal pathways evaluation, causal pathways exploration, specific methods, specific approaches, and listen to a more common language that will resonate with the people that we are working with. So it's easier for them to explore and express changes that already happen. So moving away from speaking like we're doing evaluation, but more closer leaning into using stories, metaphors, and probably using art or visual or probably musical media might help engaging people more into be able to resonate what kind of changes according to their culture. So how do we know that we can say that we're ready to explore the causal pathways is when we as a team ready to ask ourselves how, why, or for whom, in what context changes is coming about. So we are open to using this information. We are willingly to use this information, changing our strategies and response. So that's one indicator that we are ready to explore the causal pathways. We are also open to challenge our assumption about how change happens. It's a living document, it's a living process, reflecting, revisiting what have we done in the past year, in the past 2 years, and then emerging with a new probably set of outcomes and interested in any emerging outcomes, open to any suggestion. So this is one of the two indicators that we are ready to explore the causal pathways. There is much to learn about one strategy, about effectiveness, and how change is coming about. But often this means also there is not much prior evidence demonstrating that the change strategy leads to the desired outcome in a similar context. Or in other words, probably uncertainty is sufficiently high about how change really happened, or probably it's already happening, to justify one investment in deep causal analysis. There is a clear use for what we will learn, and if we are curious about how change happens, open to testing our assumption, interested in the unexpected, and also recognize that there is much that is unknown, we are probably in a good position that we want this causal pathways work and ready to explore. We also need to be open to using the results to adapt the strategy, as I mentioned earlier, to reflect, adapting, or probably communicating with others to do the similar work, to plan a new strategy, or probably have a different approaches moving forward. Okay. So we have two topics here about building buy-in and also the readiness. Please reflect for what you have done, your organization, and please put in the poll. Wow. 80%. Most of the challenge is readiness, strength, and evaluation practice to move from description to causal explanation. Okay. Jeff, I think we still have time for group discussion, yeah?
Yeah, we've got time. Did you have anything else to say, Yulianto?
Yes, no, I'm done. So I think we can move forward to the group discussion, or if you have any questions here.
So yeah, we're going to go into small groups here.
So similar to the previous one, everyone, feel free. If you want to join one of the group discussion, it's with the buy-in or the readiness. Okay, thanks everyone for coming back to this room again, but not exiting. So I would like to ask one or two volunteers, probably, Jeff, to share key takeaways from what they have discussed in the breakout rooms. So we have the topic, the buy-in and readiness. So if there is a volunteer, key point from the first one and the second one. All right. Feel free to open your microphone. I see Jularat and Jerian already opened their videos. Would you want to take the chance to open your microphone?
Yes. Actually, both
You.
of us, we are in the same group. group one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe I just started, and then Jerian, you can add, or Rora or Patpon, can you also add? So actually, we not discussed at the beginning about the key takeaway, but it's more like who choose what, and then some of us choose the buy-in question, and then I myself about readiness one. But then yeah, so for those who choose buy-in, they have the challenge in the organization that how can you convince the organization to go with this causal pathway, but because at the end of the day, sometimes you have to follow what the donors want, and then like doing like a tick box, right? And for me, that the readiness one is a key, because I'm not in the organization, but I'm more like a freelancer. And then I did the evaluation many years ago, and just came back because I saw the on the Facebook about this training workshop, and then that's why it's totally new for me. So for me, it's more like a readiness, and how can I differentiate between the normal evaluation, like descriptive one, and the causal pathway. Yeah, and then we have some kind of a little bit discussion at the end of the discussion. What are the questions that Jerian also raised in the group that it would be good also to ask in the plenary, that how can we include the causal pathway in at the beginning of the project, not just at the end, but how can we include them since the beginning, and then everyone can participate and also, you know, buy them in since the beginning of the project, something like that. Jerian, please.
Thank you, Jerian, please.
No, I think you captured that correctly. I think we were also like really discussing like evaluation sometimes often happen at the end after a specific project's done, and then you're kind of also a little bit left with, okay, and what now? What do we do with this learning? And I think if a causal pathway thinking can really be applied throughout the way of working, it actually also brings a lot of value. And that's very relevant in my context. We don't even have projects as such, right? We don't work project-based. So then how are you going to evaluate what you do? And I think their causal pathway thinking could be really helpful.
That's interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Jerian. I'm going to give a opportunity for Jeff to comment, but I think I'm going to respond what Jularat has mentioned, especially the last part about the ideal time where we can set up this causal pathways exploration initiative here. Ideally for me, it's during the beginning of the program implementation, but with the situation probably it's also can be done during the middle of project implementation, or almost at the end. Right now I'm working in a new project, and probably I can say I got lucky that our donor requires this explicitly, that before project implementation we need to set up some kind of a 3-6 month period where the team can discuss about the pathways to change the causal pathways, where it will lay the groundwork for the program team to do the interpretation early in 2026. Yeah, so that's my being lucky to work in some kind of a project. Jeff, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I do actually. The thing that warmed the cockles of my heart, Jerian, is when you said a way of thinking. And if there's one takeaway for you guys, I'd love you to go away with is that idea that primarily this is a way of thinking about ourselves. What is our role in the world? And me as an evaluator, some of you may be evaluators, some of you may be in funding organizations or whatever, that our role in the world is much more about finding out about why things happen and contributing to change at that level than just describing what is happening. And if you leave this 1 or 3 sessions just with that, I think that would be winning. So I really loved it. You said that, Julianne. And on a similar note, Camila's asked, as I hope I'm saying your name right, Camila, a very interesting question, which Camila, I'll get you to unmute and just ask live, and then we'll see if we can figure out an answer to it.
Okay, Emilia, would you be able to open your microphone? You have a very interesting questions and we'd love to hear more. Only audio is fine. You don't need to camera.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
Yes, I'm having this question. I think this session is really interesting for me, but it is honestly it is a new thing for me, talking about causal monitoring and other things relating to causal frameworks. And I work in an organization that is still building an M&E system, and it is a totally new situation for the organization. And this is what I have in daily basis, the situation that M&E activities are basically practiced based on the theory, although now it's shifting to participatory method. And I'm wondering if we should shift it to the systems based, because it is totally new again for us. Please advise. Thank you.
Thank you, Camelia, for that great question. I don't know how many of you guys are parents. I am. I've got 4 kids who are all grown up now. But when they were little, they kept asking me questions. They still do, but they asked me questions, and I never knew the answer to any of these questions. And you know what I'd do? I'd say, what do you think? That's my answer to any question. So if we were talking one-to-one, Camelia, I would say, what do you think? But I can't do that right now. So I'm going to have to make something up. My initial reaction from my gut is this, and this is only me, and I haven't thought about this before, and it's not a universal answer. This is Jeff Mathias telling you what I think on today. But what I think really quite strongly is this stuff isn't about should I be participatory or should I be systems-based or should I be theory-based or should I use this methodology or that methodology. It's for me, it's not about that. You can be participatory and systems thinking if you want to. The key thing for me for your question is you want to have a monitoring system that captures causality, and we don't know exactly what the program you're working is, but you want to have a monitoring system that captures causality in that. Just hold that there as a tender, fragile thing that you say, that's what we're protecting. And then start designing your system around that. And use your team to help you, because there's not a universal answer to how you do this in your context with your resources, with everything. There's and then just say, how do we get participatory? And do we do this? Do we do that? And keep trying stuff. And you can be systems thinking and participatory, or you say, let's have a bit more theory in there, or maybe let's have less theory, and just keep iterating with that. I'll use the word holy question in front of you. Our role here is to keep tracking causality. So that's the one thing I'm going to say. Just know what your role is, and then get a group of people in and keep figuring it out. That's possibly not a very helpful question, but that's honestly what I think. And Yulianto's gone up to the next slide, so let's get into that here. I've got this stuff. I love it, but hopefully it's stimulated some ideas for you guys. Flick some questions into the chat, and we'll answer them. If we're unable to answer them all, because there'll be some rich, deep things which I probably can't answer any. We'll try to either answer them in subsequent sessions or contact you and get a dialogue going. So we'll just keep an eye on the chat. And if anyone's just got a question they would like to ask live, you're also welcome to unmute your mic or stick up. Use the icon, the hand icon to raise your hand.
To raise your
And we'll-
hand, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll ask you to ask the question.
Now while we are waiting for questions, I think I want to add something to respond to Camelia's questions. Yeah, I think I want to highlight one of Jeff's comment about talking with a group of people, and not just your supervisor or team leader, but also, if possible, to your partners, Camelia, grantees, if possible, beneficiaries, depending what type of the project organization you are currently working with. I think without trying to say it's participatory, but having different many people putting in the comments what other ideas probably that could help you to lay the groundwork for the pathways to change, and then probably it will help you to be able to set up what type of M&E system you want to have in your organization. But if I may ask, is this the organization-based organization that you are currently talking about, Camelia? Because your name is, for me, is like Indonesian name.
Yes,
Aha.
I'm Indonesian.
Okay, it's good.
Yeah.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Pak
I mean,
Yulianto.
we can talk more about this. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, Jeff. We have. Thank you, Mbak Camelia. Jeff, we have Saswati raising hand. Saswati, you can open your mic if you want.
Yeah, Sashwati.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So I'm from India, and I've had some idea about causal pathways before, and so I've joined a new organization, and I see in this organization the structure is such that there are different ecosystems. Then there's a separate M&A team, and there's a different leadership. I'm from program management, and there are leadership, teams. And I wish I had this, I had the opportunity to attend this lecture earlier, because just yesterday we had a strat meeting for our team. And I've realized, while we are talking about, how causal pathway is, looking in the past, and then creating a pathway for the future, maybe. I feel there is this fear in the leadership position as well, and within the M&E team as well. What if some uncomfortable, questions arise, after doing the practice of causal pathway? Then how do we address it? There may be different kind of uncomfortable questions where maybe the team is not willing to go beyond a certain point, and not willing to, not yet ready to, bring in those changes in the organization or within the team. So, so as someone who is not really at the top leadership position, how would I broach this topic then?
Shall I try and answer, Yulianto?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. What a great question. My goodness. Difficult stuff,
Indeed.
because there's all these hierarchies of power and ecosystems and silos, and there's Pulero Sashwati in the middle of it saying, "What, I can see what's going on. What do I do?" And I think that's one of those great challenges. But I think, again, this is my gut rather than my head telling me what to do here. But I think the way to do this is build alliances inside your organization. Find people who you think are kind of get it, and start that discussion with them, and then just try to widen it. But ultimately, what you want to do, it'll take a while. It may take a year, but what you're trying to do is to get a swell inside your organization that says, what we really need to do is to look at ourselves and ask ourselves those questions. Are there things too uncomfortable for us? And I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I know a little bit about India. Are we too scared to talk about caste issues? Are we being gender discriminatory in our work and in our organization? I don't know if those are the questions, but are there fundamental things inside our organization that's stopping us look at what are really the blocks to change? So I think what you need to do is to be strategic and political, if you like, build alliances, have the conversations in safe places first. When you've got a small group of people, then make a presentation to one team about it, see how that goes. But eventually what you're trying, your long-term goal is the whole organization is robust and honest enough to ask itself its own hard questions. Is there something we're avoiding here? Can we be better by being more causally aware, even if that raises difficult issues for us? Yeah, that's just off the top of my head how I feel about that question. But it's so honest and so true. Thank you for the question. It's very real.
I think if I may add is I've been in your position, Saswati. That adding what Jeff has informed earlier, it's also in my experience, it's important to engage the partners, discussing about changes, information, data, and what their expectations are. I have some experience that our grantees, our partners demanding a more evidence-based decision making from the project because it benefits them. So it takes a process, but it's worth the shot. And for me also, it's very important to get the buy-in from the internal program team implementers. Instead of asking them data or numbers, I offer my service to them. How can I help you? How can I help you writing the reports? How can I help you observing or facilitating the after action review after your training or something like that, and get them to trust, gaining trust after some time. That's my point. Jeff, please.
I've just got one other little idea to add that I came up as Yuliantha was talking. One of the other things you could do, Saraswati, is at some point in that journey between now and your whole organization talking, you get someone from outside, maybe from the Causal Pathways Initiative, to do a little workshop or presentation or play the game, I love playing games, play some games with you, but ask that question from someone who's not you. So they don't have anything to lose if the organization gets upset about it or if it's too difficult, whereas it's much harder for you to do it. So at some point you try to say, could we have, and it could be electronic or real, but it just, and a way to change your thinking and how we define ourselves. Our role is to chase causal pathways, no matter how risky it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Saswati. Okay, we have one question, Jeff, from Kavita Tatwadi. Kavita, if you would be willing to open your microphone and tell us more about your questions or challenge.
Sorry, I'm in a very noisy place, so that's why I wasn't speaking. My biggest challenge comes from the fact that we work with a lot of philanthropists who are part of our pool funds, and they want a very rigorous evaluation. They want all kind of causal pathways to be drawn, but they don't want to pay for the evaluations. And most of the times they ask us to force the implementing organizations to get them the data so that they can share it with their boards or their internal teams, etc. But I feel that that's quite sinful, because you're taking away the implementing organizations from the work that they're actually doing and making them do the data collection, which will take away from the actual impact that might happen. So my question is, how do you then convince these funders?
Wow, thank you. This is tough. So I give it to you, Jeff.
Thanks, you. I was going to give it to you. You guys are asking all the easy questions now. Again, no easy answer off the top of my head, but something that came up just as you're saying that. My wife runs a mental health organization in Dehradun. You're obviously somewhere I'm thinking of somewhere in India, Kavita. And she does a lot of participatory stuff. It's deeply participatory, and they work with many people who have lived experience of mental health. There'll be people with schizophrenia or families and caregivers who are very poor and live in a single room with a family member who's got schizophrenia. The real stories that you will know about. They work a lot with them. And a beautiful thing that the word that they use, which is quite freeing, is they call them experts by experience and give them that honor. And they'll present in front of the Uttarakhand government and say, we've got a group of experts by experience who are about to present now. And so that whole idea of using that term, which honors the knowledge and skill and complexity understanding that people who live in the situation actually have, and your implementing partners, you could call them experts by experience as well. And that might be a word that you can present to your more senior people, saying, look, these are experts by experience. We need to pay for the expertise. It's not that's only one idea that comes up for me. Big and difficult question. You'll have the complete answer though. Tell us.
Yeah, yeah, not a complete answer, but in my experience, performing rigorous evaluation doesn't have to be big, expensive, and utilizing external evaluators. I've involved in some evaluation where we use where we work internally with the program team members. So of course, we have to set up a specific procedures to avoid minimize bias, and also to provide rooms for discussion with our partners and grantees. So they came about to own the evaluation results and the evaluation funding and use it as the basis to improve the program implementation. So that's one of the things where I usually do to strategize with a very low budget for evaluation. And probably it's not fully answering your question, but I'm sure we all dealing with that kind of situation where we have to make best use of our budget, composition of team members to be able to get something as a result of our program implementation. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. Okay. If you have follow-up comments or question, Kavita, you can always send an email to us. I think at the end of this slide, Jeff will have some kind of information about how to contact the Causal Pathways Initiative, so we can follow up with you all other participants. Yeah. So let's see if there's anyone else. We are approaching 5 minutes, but
yes,
probably
maybe
one
if
more
you
comments or question. Yeah.
We look, Kavita, thank you. We look forward to you contacting us. Yulianto, if you could click onto the next slide.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, with that thing that we all try to do in learning, you go to something really interesting, try to ground it, try to make sure you hold something. This is for you to do by yourself. Just see if you can write down for yourself one myth that you want to challenge. We've already got some things inside organizations people want to challenge, or one action you want to take in order to take this self-definition of yourself and your organization as searching for the cause of the injustice in the world, as well as a description of it and activities around it. We're actually looking for the causes. So pick one myth and write it down. This is just for yourself. You don't have to share it, or you're welcome to share with us if you like, or take or an action. Here's some examples there. Let's see if you can define something you will take away from this session. I'm just going to pause for 20 seconds just while you let that sink in, because I think it's really great to make sure you take something away from a 2-hour webinar. You don't just listen and say that was interesting and then carry on life as normal. So we'll just pause. Okay, if you haven't had time to do that, maybe you do it just after the session, but do try to say, what's one thing I'm going to do or change, or something that goes out from. And I found this causal pathways thing really, really interesting. It's a journey for me. It'll be a journey for all of us. It'll be a journey for our organizations. It's evolving. I think it's the way evaluation is going. I really do. There's the Causal Pathways Initiative has a whole lot of resources that you and your organizations are welcome to tap into. And there's some others here. If you click the next slide, Julianto. So here's some things you can do. Presentations, and on the left-hand side, there are presentations and trainings. There's stuff like this. Causal Pathways presents at the American Evaluation Association, and we're available on request to do bespoke presentations to your organization. Obviously, you have to be reasonably big for that to happen, but you might be able to find individual evaluators like me and get me to do something kind of on the side. And there's virtual training on the kind of basics of causal pathway if you feel your organization would like to. There's the context for causal pathways down there, and you'll have a copy of this. There's also resources out there. Betterevaluation.com, which I hope you know about, have a whole lot of resources on causal pathways evaluations. There are case studies, and there's a recent book chapter which maybe we'll give you in the next session if we don't. Just go back, Julianto. We're going to show you the book chapter in a second, but there's also this thing that Causal Pathways does called the Brains Trust, whereas again, you have to be a reasonable sized organization, but you can contact us and say, we've got this specific question, can you give us some ideas of where to go, how we might do this? And we normally get 2 or 3 of us from the Brains Trust to have a chat with the organization and then figure out where we go from here. And we just got a poll up there. And while you're doing that, you can go on to the next slide, Julianto. So this is from Better Evaluation, and that the Causal Pathways page on there. And there are resources out there. That's just, you're not out there alone. This is, what do I do? There are ways to do it. There's both people and physical resources. And next slide. Oh, we got to the end. Okay. And we're probably bang on time. Look at that. It's 59 past the hour. Thank you very much. I love the engagement. I squirmed a bit at your hard questions at the end, but we know we've done a good session when you give us questions like that. Thank you very much. Thank you for just being cool people. Thank you for being you. And there are 2 more, one next week, one the other, the week after, if you want to enroll in them. They're free. They're at Asia-friendly times. And you're also welcome to contact us on those contacts that are there. We're pretty friendly people. We don't bite. Julianto will throw some heavy metal music at you, but
next week.
Next week. Okay, there you go. Well, we're all going to come. We'll come into head banging. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully,
Thanks,
to see you
everyone.
next week, and we'll send
Thank
out the
you.
recording soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a nice day.
Bye.